Welcome to your favorite morning show. And of course, you know that's Jasiri. Thank you so much for tuning in. We also say a very big happy Workers' Day to everyone. So I'm sure you're watching or streaming from the comforts of your home because you do have a public holiday. And the federal government so graciously declared today as a public holiday. But let's not forget that this year's celebration comes in the face of rising inflation and a biting fuel scarcity that has hit much of the country. And just yesterday, it was also announced that the federal government has approved a salary increase of between 25% and 35% for civil servants on the remaining 6 consolidated salary structures, which takes effect from January the 1st, which means some people are getting some back money. Ladies, but we're working.
I wish you.
We're working.
I've never known, if you're a
holiday.
broadcaster, honestly, we forget holidays
because
we work in and out of season, except when we're on leave. We are in the office. But happy Workers' Day to everyone who works passionately. Because you have to have passionately and legally.
Yes.
So because everybody is just working.
The exciting part about the public holidays for me is that the roads are free. But you see, I disagree with the fact that people are watching from the comfort of their home, because the queue that I saw today, people wanted to get fuel. I feel like a lot of people just said, oh, tomorrow is a public holiday, so I'm just going to queue.
I died there. We died there.
Yeah.
It's like even when I was coming, some queues at certain stations that I've been watching since the weekend have reduced. Other stations, of course, a lot of people are trying to go to NNPC, and their trusted stations are still there.
Some have even increased. One of the petrol stations that I would buy from, their fuel price reduced.
Did you buy from them?
No, I haven't, but I saw a lot of people queuing. Their pump price was 510.
Maybe something's going on.
Maybe something's going on, because I
actually
heard that they actually want them to force the price down. And I did see 510 this morning, but the queue
for the 510.
Honestly, I would believe some people even slept there.
No, so that's where it's now where am I going to queue because I want to do 510, or go to a station that only has maybe like 10 other cars and they're doing 550.
I don't even see any stations with 10 other cars, especially on the main line.
I'm just trying to say, if it was a situation, you will just weigh, saving some money with saving some time.
510 or 620.
How much time?
Some people are buying,
because time is money.
Some people are buying one
time is money.
I just buy 5 liter and go. Then I'll come back and queue.
No, and we hear from the NNPCL that this should be resolved sometime. They're hoping it will resolve today, and we hope with them as well that it will resolve today. But ladies, you know, it is Workers' Day, and it's interesting that over time, some professions have become obsolete, while some no longer have the dignity or the respectable cloak. So ladies, what professions were once highly respected for you guys, but now have really seemingly turned into a complete joke?
Medicine and law.
Doctors and lawyers, they're jokers to you?
In Nigeria. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say they are jokers, but the government has really ridiculed those people.
They say that they should be suing.
Like, really, for lawyers, I see a lot of, people, they get called to bar, and then the next thing you're seeing marries hair, or makeup, this and that, people selling makeup products.
Wow. They're adaptable to the situation.
The situation is what I'm talking about. Having doctors run it. So when we were in school, then doctors, the medical students always had preferential treatment. Even NYC, their salaries were higher. So you would never expect that it will come a time when doctors are saying, "Oh, the government is taking us for granted. We're having brain drain. People are running away because they're not getting paid." I'm like, "Oh, really? So it happened."
But I wonder how Blessings hopped, skipped, and jumped over the people who are causing you to disrespect doctors and lawyers. Who's causing it? Politicians.
That's what I
know. You went to the level first you bypassed the cause of the situation.
That's why I recall and I said I don't have a problem with the doctors and the lawyers.
So
I just feel like the government has ridiculed them.
Okay.
To be honest.
So the government that's ridiculing them is politicians, and for me, that they're number one on my list. Because yes, it used to be very respectable, especially for Nigerian politicians, but this is all over the world. These days, a lot of people worldwide do not trust their politicians at all. So politicians, top of the list for me.
Cosmetologists. Liars Association. I used to we used to put like a stock in their trade, but now everybody is an all-comers game. If you are not sure about what you're rubbing in your skin, you better don't go to organic skincare.
No. Organic is not what you think organic is.
By the time you see that they have removed the it's just garlic that's inside the cream.
The organic will make your organ leak.
And another thing is, honestly, I think typists.
No, so that's obsolete.
That's obsolete.
Obsolete.
Because of the way the world was.
Yes, the
I
world
remember,
has
I actually
evolved.
remember learning typing in school, the placement of your, the placement of your fingers
What's this
on
one that you type and then move, you slap it away?
That's a typewriter.
That's a type.
Oh my God, what's that thing that came? That's a typewriter.
You move, bam. I used to do this because it was so fun. But now, ASD, semicolon, FKJ, bam.
And shorthand.
Energy.
That one is obsolete. Who does shorthand now?
No, so there's still some people who do, like people, I've done a few events where you have repertoires who are meant to take notes and everything. So they have a form of shorthand because of the note taking.
Well, you can easily do voice notes.
No, they still do the two because when they're putting the report together, they want to make sure they don't miss. So they're shorthand and then they're recording.
Okay.
Guys, you guys have not said pastors. Nah, men of God. And I just want to say pastors, religious figures, because it's both Christian and Muslim.
Yeah.
So religious figures, the respect we used to really have for them, I think is gone. And you know, I was talking to somebody the other day, I said, it's not a profession, it's supposed to be a calling, but we turned it into a profession. Every other corner, somebody has seen a vision from God, has become a bishop, a general overseer, just titles you're giving yourself.
Somebody said that the world will end on the 24th of April.
Please,
and then he came back and said, because he and his people prayed and fasted, God had mercy on the 7 billion others of us.
I'm happy because people are now learning to ask questions.
Sorry, go ahead.
Another profession, another institution that no longer has respect, monarchies. Before we used to fear them. We used to think deities were something. But until they went to Igaidugoro in Lagos and stole the Yopache, and nobody was struck by lightning, nobody died. The youth scattered it away and they're still living. I said the gods have retired.
No, the gods are tired.
Must be retired. So I think another profession for me that I would put under the category of obsolete, would I say obsolete or, for lack of a better word, useless, is theatre arts.
Went from obsolete to useless. Obsolete and useless are not the same thing. Obsolete means its time has gone.
That's why I
useless
said
means it's still here, but there's no use.
By that?
That's what I mean. Because people are still doing it. But except maybe the influencers want to sign you for their video and then maybe make you a video vixen. I don't see any
acting,
use for it.
Wow. Theater arts is acting.
Theater arts is acting, drama.
Yeah, so a lot of times when I picture theater, I picture more of the dancing.
No,
then you need to open your mind.
Theater art has poetry, it has dance, it has costume, it has makeup, it has special
how many actors actually studied theater?
No, there are lots of them that study theater art.
There's so many that study theater art.
And then don't just think of actors as Nollywood. We still have a very thriving theater stage
I promise you,
ecosystem.
Because you are such a Gen Z, the next time there's a stage production, shall buy you a ticket
because I hardly even
and I will take you. Maybe you haven't seen a stage production to
especially if it's a Bolanle Austin Peters production.
What?
I don't think I've ever seen any stage production.
Wow. So, I have to change it for
you. Do you know what? This is the problem. There's a lack of exposure to things that are cultural. And they expand you to art. Whose fault is it?
It's not, I mean,
after they've told you that after you get to a certain age, you can't be asking whose fault again. You carry the blame yourself.
You carry the blame. You carry the blame.
I'm not gotten there yet.
So one other thing on this conversation in terms of like professions that are either obsolete or have lost respect is, I think as a people, Nigerians, we need to learn to give dignity in labor. People who are they're hustling, they're doing legit, hard jobs, they're trying to put money and food on the table for their families, but they're not going against the law to do it. They're not scamming people to do it. We have a way of downgrading and looking down on certain types of jobs, and it should not be so. Everyone should be able to have dignity in the labor that they do for themselves, however small it is, as long as it's legal. They're not hurting people, they're not scamming other people, they're not trying to coerce or whatever. We need to reframe that mindset, because we'll leave this country saying we can't do certain jobs and travel abroad.
I was just going to take it out of your mouth. I will go abroad and we will do the same job and we will carry it. I used to tell a lot of security people when I see them, I say, why are you doing this job if you do not like it? If you do not find dignity in it, you are not stealing. Because many of them would even tell you to your face, na condition, na make crayfish bend. I'm like, if you think it's a demeaning job, then don't take it.
No, it's
so
not
that
that
your
easy.
dignity can be intact.
No. Would you choose dignity over the ability to
sustenance?
You can't.
But you can never be at your best. You can never be.
It is not, in Nigeria, it is not an option. It's only a few people who are blessed to be doing what they actually want to do and be making money for. A lot of people are passionate about things. Artists, they do amazing job, but a lot of times it doesn't sustain them.
Yeah.
So they're maybe in the middle of the night, they're painting, drawing, whatever it is. But in the morning, they're like, guy, I need to find something that I can feed with, which is unfair. But you will blame the system for it.
That was some time ago. Artwork, people that do arts are beginning to see better light now, because there are more galleries, there are more people that appreciate the arts. Even a lot of people do not appreciate when you say theater art. I know how sometimes it's very demeaning the way they treat theater artists. I remember one year like that, we were supposed to perform for the president in Abuja. We had rehearsed that stage drama, that musical stage drama, for like a whole month. And it was just a 15-minute dance drama. They didn't even let us perform the drama for 5 minutes.
They rushed everything.
They wanted to hurry us off the stage, and it was so. I won't lie to you. That day, I think it was the last time I actually did like a performance.
So the funny thing is, my sister actually made me love theater. I almost studied theater because she's an amazing dancer. And then growing up, because she was in Ilorin, I used to, attend their dance. I don't know if I'll categorize it on the stage play, but I used to see them rehearse and all that. They traveled to dance. I just loved it. But now I don't see that happening.
No, it still happens. But again, remember, it's a very particular kind of ecosystem. They have their type of fans, and it's still there. So I know recently one of the ones that Joke Sylvan, I can't remember who else did, recently celebrated 10 years. Hear Word or something. Hear Word. Recently resuscitated. So they do. And the thing is, I think it's just we don't have an appreciation for that. A lot of us don't have an appreciation for that type of art.
Anyway, let's head for a break now. But when we return, we'll be shining the light on a crucial topic that affects many families globally. So stay with us, because Jasiri will be coming right back. Welcome back. We're streaming live on all our social media platforms. We're at News Central TV. Please use the hashtag Jasiri to be a part of the conversation. April was Autism Awareness Month, and it doesn't mean because April is over that conversation stops spotlighting autism spectrum disorder must end. It doesn't have to. Statistics shows that 1 in 125 children in Nigeria is living with this condition, and we must work to raise awareness for them and their families. Our guest is a dedicated advocate of autism spectrum disorder and a parent of an autistic child. For over 7 years, he has been passionately raising awareness about autism and supporting families affected by it. Yinka Ogunnubi, you are very welcome to Jasiri. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Amatunde. Thanks for having me here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Every worker.
All right.
Thank you very much. So let's just jump right at it. Yinka, you can start, by telling us a little bit about your journey as a parent of an autistic child. What are the signs? Because in Nigeria, a lot of people do not even understand autism, not to talk about the spectrum.
Yeah, thanks so much. Where do we start from? Typically, what you find with parents is that they understand the developmental stage of a child's life. So at some point, you expect the child to walk. At some point, you expect the child to talk. At some point, you expect the child to socialize. And I think the first signs for any parent of a child on the spectrum is that all these milestones are not met. All right. It takes a while for the child to walk. It takes a while for the child to communicate and talk. It takes a while for the child to function. So they don't function with other children. They don't interact. They don't communicate. And they have violent streaks where they can be very violent to themselves and also to others. So you begin. Very early on, you begin to see those signs. And I've talked to parents who have had, who maybe they came to the diagnosis when the child was in their teens. And I've had them say, I've noticed this when the child was just 1 or 2 or 3. But because we live in a society where we are akin to deny some of these things, what we see, probably because of religious reasons, we don't want to accept the fact of what we see. Also because of lack of education or ignorance, we don't necessarily pay attention to it. And what happens then is that the child doesn't get the kind of support they need, the professional support they need, and then the condition becomes worse and worse because by the time intervention comes, the brain of the child is formed and there's very little intervention can do. So to summarize what I've said, the signs are the child lacks social interaction, the child is unnecessarily aggressive, the child doesn't communicate, and then the child lacks the ability to function in the normal society as it is expected at every age level.
Right. And how did you go about getting your child tested? Because, I mean, a lot of times I've heard stories, and including this one that you just mentioned, a lot of people just see the signs after a while. Is there no way to get the child tested and detect before, it gets, I don't know, maybe late or something?
Thanks, Blessing. I think now there's a lot more awareness and there's a lot more resources out there that actually helps parents with autistic children or special needs children. During the time when I started with my son, there was not a lot. And I'm talking about 7 years ago. We didn't have a clue what to do. Completely, we had no clue. We saw what was going on and we couldn't explain it. And the reason why it didn't make sense to us was because Daniel, my son, was our second child. So the first child, a girl, Tomisi, she was fantastic. I mean, she met all the milestones. I mean, we were having a breeze as a parent. And so you could compare between the two that, okay, why is this boy taking so much time? And what we kept hearing from people was that, oh, he's a boy, he's slow, they don't necessarily, speak early and all that. So we kept on just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then we could see that this child was deteriorating in our presence. So, the first thing really was we had to overcome that denial of what we were seeing. It was a huge part. It was easier for my wife. I think most mothers get this thing, faster. But for me as a guy, as a man, as a father, it was difficult. Probably what made it more difficult was because I was also I was a leader in my church, so I can, Olusegun be, prophesying negatively. You understand what I'm saying? So it took me a while, but at the point where I finally came to that point where I said, okay, something is wrong here. We need to find an answer. We started to seek for solutions. And then we went to several government institutions to see if they could help us. There was not much, they could do. Everybody kept on talking about just pay and then we will sort you out. And I'm like, look, I don't understand what you're talking about, so I can't. Fortunately for us, somebody referred us to Mrs. Dr. Akonde of Patrick's Speech and Learning Center.
Yes.
And I was very skeptical because at that time I'd already seen like 3 or 4 other people. So I was like, okay, another one. So I went there. We booked an appointment with her. And for the first time, she understood what we were going through. Because I didn't happen to realize that she's not just the head of the center, she also has an autistic child. So she understood what we were going through. And, so she gave us the contact of a particular hospital in Ikeja. I think it was a military hospital in Ikeja. And then the name of a doctor. There's an Asian doctor. So we went there and he welcomed us and he ran the test. So there's a normal test. There's a behavioral test. It's actually behavioral test. They're not blood tests or stuff like that. And then he ran the test on my son. And then he gave us the diagnosis and he said he's on the spectrum. Now, at that time, we had no clue what spectrum
meant.
Yeah.
What was he talking about? So I asked him, what do you mean by spectrum? He said, go back to Mrs. Akonde, she will explain it to you. So we went back to Mrs. Akonde, and when we showed her the results, and they said, oh, he is on the spectrum. But he's on the low end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So there's hope that if we start aggressive therapy at this age, you'll be able to regulate it. So that's what we did. So there are facilities now, many or more facilities now that actually do this test and provide diagnosis.
Okay, Yinka, you talked about the spectrum. So this is called the Autism Spectrum Disorder, but we know that there are a number of diagnoses along the spectrum, especially for neurodiversity. But when you talk about Mr. Akande mentioning the spectrum and him being on the low end, can you take us through that? There are a lot of people who don't understand that it varies from individual to individual, from child to child, from adult to adult, because unfortunately now we know there are a lot more adults who are being diagnosed with having autism in their older age, in their adulthood, which now explains some of their behavior from before, and they didn't have the opportunity to get diagnosed and get help. So take us a little bit through the the spectrum, what you know of the spectrum as an autism advocate and a parent of a child with autism.
Okay, good. Thank you, Tolu. So the idea that it's a spectrum means that it differs and it affects different children in a different way. So certain reactions will occur on the basis of where the child is on that spectrum. So, the lower end of the spectrum, you find that the signs are basically the same all throughout. So you find that the child is very aggressive, has very few speech. They can be quite divergent, in their ability to relate with other people.
Yeah.
But they can ultimately be regulated to function. Okay, so on the low end of the spectrum, there's a high bar to function. That is if there's intervention as early as possible. On the high end of the spectrum, it is almost a case where the child cannot function. So that child would need a lot more support, to do normal things. They will be a lot more aggressive, violent, and they can also they don't also communicate, as much. So at the end of the day, what you get is that child will need support throughout their
lifetime.
But you see, this is what happens. This is what happens. A lot of children actually start off on the low end of the spectrum and they end up on the high end. Because at the low end of the spectrum, they didn't get the kind of support they needed at that time when the brain was still forming. So by the time they degenerate, it's a degenerative disorder. So they degenerate and they degenerate, and then they begin to go higher and higher on the spectrum until they become completely divergent, neurodivergent, and they can't function.
So
let there's a need for parents to really start the intervention pretty early, yes.
And that means parents need to be aware of the signs and the symptoms to look for. I have a friend who has an autistic child, and I understand what she went. I was with her in things of trying to get diagnosis, understanding, and understanding that the child learns differently doesn't mean that the child cannot learn. And it is a lot of work, but when the children are able to make milestones and you see an improvement, the absolute feeling it brings you. But I want to talk about some misconceptions, and you brought up religion a little bit earlier when you talked about the time you guys were going through trying to get your son diagnosed, and we've been seeing pictures of him as well. But in terms of the misconceptions, what are the misconceptions you've encountered? You've learned because it's a situation you've been through. You've also been able to advocate for other parents who are now in the system as well, trying to figure out how to work with their child and how to find ways and to help them, and of course to intervene, as you said. But there are common misconceptions we have here in Nigeria, across the African continent most likely, about autism. What are the ones you've encountered? How have you tried to address them, or to at least educate people about what autism is?
You know, some of these misconceptions, I had them myself. So I'm not talking about somebody who is not guilty. I mean, I was guilty of it myself. And when I see children with special needs, autism, Down syndrome, dyslexic, you know, I came from a place where I felt that there was something spiritual, you know, spiritually wrong with them. That they were demon possessed and all that, and all you needed to do was to put them in a room and cast out the demon, and that was it. And I think that's one of the common misconceptions, and that's why I understand people who still have this misconception, because I came from there, and that was why it was difficult for me to accept what I was saying, because I felt, no, this is not my portion. You know, I've been taught in church to be positive, you know, speak positively and all positive confessions. So I felt it wasn't so that misconception is very strong. But you know, over time and getting to you know, deal with this on a day-to-day basis on over 17 years now, I've come to understand that no, it's not a spiritual problem. It's a disability. That's what it is. It's a disability. It is the same disability that you have with somebody that is blind, that is, you know, deaf, that is, you know, on wheelchair. It's just a disability, but it's a learning disability. People have come to accept disabilities that they can see, but they struggle with disabilities they can't see.
Very true.
And that's where the misconception comes in. So for those who are parents of special needs children who are religious, take it from me as somebody who has been there, that there's nothing wrong with your child. There's no spiritual problem with your child. The child is not suffering from demon possession. You cannot slap it out of him or her. You cannot beat it out of him or her. What that child needs is what every person struggling with disability needs: support. That's all. Give that support, and the child will be in a good place.
All right, Yinka, we need to go for a quick break now, but we have more questions for you, particularly on your experience, how society as well as individuals can better support people living with autism, and much more. The conversation will continue after this, right here on Jasiri.
Thank you very much. If you're just joining us, you've missed quite a bit, but you still have some more catch-up to do on Jasiri today. We are focusing on children. We're talking to someone who is an advocate, Mr. Ogunnubi, our guest. He is an advocate for autism or children living on the spectrum, basically. And we have been having questions about their experience and all that they need to do, or how you can know if you have a child living with autism. Thank you very much, Mr. Ogunnubi. Are you still there with us?
I'm here.
All right. Let me even ask, because in your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced, you know, as individuals living with people with autism and their families generally, in respect to things like support services, education, employment opportunities? Because in Nigeria, we still fear what we don't understand. And a lot of people might think that, oh, there's something wrong with the child, and they don't want other children to associate. Even some schools are still not educated enough to know that these are special needs children that need special focus.
Thank you, Jasiri. Let me start by saying that we need more information. We need more education. And that's why I'm happy for what you guys are doing. I really do appreciate the fact that you guys decided to take on this show, because what you are doing helps to basically create the awareness that we are talking about. We need schools to be more inclusive. We need schools to have at least one teacher in that school who can spot, identify, and handle special needs children. Because most of the time, the parents don't really know. They don't really know. They are just making guesses. But if you have a professional in school, because it's likely, from the age of 2, the child starts to go to crèche, nursery, and all that stuff. So the likelihood is that if you have a professional teacher who can spot these things in school, they can not only help to manage those children, they can also help the parents on what to do and, maybe help them to go get a test.
Yes.
So we need schools to be more inclusive. I think that our lawmakers could make it easier for schools if they actually enact laws that mandate schools to have at least one teacher trained, preferably all the teachers, but at least one trained specifically on that subject. Secondly, also, we need centers that can actually manage the treatment of these children. Now, I would say that it is a very expensive venture, very expensive. And so what you find out now is that the people who are able to get support for their children are the elite, those who can afford it. I mean, one session, 1 hour of a therapy session costs as much as 30,000 naira. 1 hour. And how many sessions are you going to do to be able to get the child to where that child needs to be? So it's expensive. One thing the government can do is to help to fund, this intervention as well. Maybe through centers that can do so, or probably also just help to subsidize the cost of trainers that eventually would do the therapy. Because if it doesn't cost you so much to be able to do this, to get the certification, to get this certification for therapy, maybe it will cost less when you're actually charging, parents on those things. And number 3 also is stigma. We need to fight stigma in society. The stigma is what is preventing parents from giving the support they need to these children. It's the problem. It's the biggest problem. It's the biggest elephant in the room. A lot of the parents are locking up these children because they are embarrassed by them.
Why? Yeah.
They're embarrassed by them. I mean, you can't. One of the most challenging things about taking our son out then was the fact of what he would do outside, because it's unpredictable. You don't know what he will do. Yeah. You can get to a place and it becomes the center of attraction. Yeah. So you find out that parents tend to keep the children locked up because they don't want the embarrassment. So, and that is because the society frowns at them. So stigma has to be, is something that we must look at. And the way we dealt with it for our son was that the moment we got the diagnosis, the moment we knew what to do, was that we just called the family meeting and also my friends. And we said, this is the diagnosis. This is what we're doing. This is what we expect from you. Because the parents cannot do it alone.
Yes.
They need help from others. So when we come together to say, these children are like us, they just have a disability, we're going to help them to go through this, I think it's going to make it a lot better for the children and the parents as well.
Yeah, so I'm glad that we are talking about the stigma and what the schools can do, because that's basically answering what my question would have been. But one of the things that you mentioned, which I would like to hinge on, is the last thing you said, which is stigma. Now, I saw a video where a girl was, a TikTok video. She was trying to introduce her younger brother, and she said, "This is my brother. He suffers from is it grade level A or something, autism." And he said, "I don't suffer. I just have it." As simple as that sounds, a lot of people need to understand that, this thing you talked about, stigma, I think it stems from the fact that a lot of people are not aware. If not that you had mentioned some of these things, a lot of people just feel like people with autism they have this extreme disability where they can't control themselves. But now we know that it's degenerative, nothing is done about it. So I think I'm going to move away from, the stigmatization, because you've talked about it. But I'm going to ask, what do you think is is the level of awareness, especially in this part of the world? Because now you're talking about some things that I've never heard before, you know, when it comes to autism. A lot of people also have that. The other day we were talking about, what's the word, Tourette syndrome. And we talked about how a lot of people are demonized because people don't know about it. I only found out about it on TikTok, and it was afterwards I saw someone. Thankfully, I saw it before I saw the person that had it. I would have been scared, like, is this person possessed? So a lot of people have that mindset that people with autism, you know, are suffering from something. It might be a spiritual problem. So what do you think is the level of awareness now, and what can be done to make people more aware of it? You said that you spoke to your friends as well, which is a very good thing to do. A lot of people would not have done that, you know, but a lot of families suffer it alone. So what can be done to make people more aware of the situation?
Yinka, please, before you answer her question, there was a video we were playing as you were answering the question that Lolo had asked, and I'd also like you to speak to that video if we can bring it back. It trended recently, but I think it is an old video. And you can obviously see this is a young boy who to some point, I think he's stemming in some ways, but he managed to climb the ladder at a TV or electronics store and was knocking things down. And so when you talk about support and having support in schools and workplaces and communities, people understanding what is going on, I think we'd also like you to speak to this kind of video. This might be an extreme level of what of the behavior of an autistic child, but it also follows up in what Blessings is asking as well. And it's an opportunity again for us to educate people.
Thank you so much, ladies. I really do, trust me, I really do appreciate what you guys are doing. I mean, you don't know how far this is going, but you are really, really doing a fantastic work. Let me answer to what Blessing asked. Earlier in the show, you gave a stat about 1 in 125 Nigerians have ASD. But the truth is that data is very questionable, you know, because we don't have a lot of
data,
information. A lot of parents are not coming out to talk about it. And because of that, we can't really determine what is the prevalence rate in Nigeria. We're just guessing, essentially. You know, I can tell you what the CDC, for instance, says. I mean, the CDC in the US says that 1 in 34 children are autistic. That's in the US. Okay. WHO says 1 in 100, but that's an average. But you see, in Nigeria, what's the percentage? We don't know. But I can take a spot data, for instance, of my family, my extended family. And when I look at all the 14 grandkids that my parents have, 2 are autistic. So in my family, that's 1 in 7. So if I'm looking at the statistics of 1 in 21, 25, I'm like, okay, I don't know. So the point is, for us to be able to get to the point where data reflects the right prevalence in Nigeria, we have to get people comfortable enough to speak out.
Yes.
And this is as simple as it is hard. I'm doing today, for instance, by 5 p.m. today, I'll be doing a spaces conversation on this subject as well. And when I decided to do it, I reached out to many parents of autistic children to say, okay, can you come forward to speak about your experience? And can I shock you that a lot of those parents said, no, I'm not ready to come out. I'm not ready to come out of the closet, because the moment I come out and I speak to it, many people that don't know will now start seeing me through those eyes. You know, and I completely understand. I told them, I said, look, I know that you're not there yet. It took me, myself, like 4 or 5 years to get to that point where I was ready to come out of the closet. So a lot of parents are in that place where they're experiencing this. They can speak in private. They are comfortable to come out to you in private. Say, okay, this is what I'm experiencing and all that. But they are not very, very comfortable to come out in public to talk about it, because they fear the repercussions of that, because they live in a society that will judge them through those prisms. Now, speaking to that video, first of all, I must express my disappointment on the platform to which it was shared. I mean, that platform has almost 2 million followers.
Yeah.
2 million followers. The moment that video came out, that's about 2 million impressions already made. All right, on people's handles. And the handle basically baited people.
Yeah.
He identified that this child is autistic, but then invited people to make their comments. In a society where the stigma is very high, what exactly did you expect people were going to say?
Yep.
And so when you go through the comments in that video, you will hear things that were very depressing, so demoralizing. People were saying the child should be beaten. People were saying the child should be slapped, brutalized, locked up. People were saying, things like foolishness resides in the heart of the heart, the rod of correction. When I read some of those comments, people were describing the child as mad, baju funweri. And when I read it, it triggered me. To be honest, it triggered me. I was very much triggered by it, and I was impacted by it. But you see, I didn't want to let my reaction be the same as the people who were commenting, because my reaction by instinct would have been to go to those people and abuse their generation and say something is wrong with you. Let this be your portion, and then you understand what I'm saying. Something like that. But I felt that, look, we need to keep educating people, because they are saying those things because they don't understand. They don't know. And so maybe if we do a lot more of enlightenment, which is why I appreciate so much what you ladies are doing. If we do so much of enlightenment, if we begin to cast a lot of light on this, maybe we can change the mind of a few people, reduce the stigma, help parents to come out, be confident enough to come up about the situation of their kids, seek support early on, and probably you can have a more reliable data for autism prevalence rate in Nigeria.
Okay, Yinka, we'll be wrapping up shortly, but there are two things I want us to take on, because what you also realize is that a lot of children or adults with autism are actually gifted. They're quite intelligent. I remember a video that came up recently on social media. The father realized his son had been in a structured environment. He's leaving university now. What happens? Difficult finding employment and holding down employment. But the father now created a company that was just for autistic people, and they're a service provider. So what do is they find faults. They help other companies with their websites and complaints. And when that company took off in 6 months, the companies they were working with reported more than 50% decrease in the type of complaints and issues that were realizing, because the autistic adults were so detail oriented. They caught the numbers, they caught the details. So I really want us to speak to that as well. And I see it also. my daughter and my friend's daughter played chess. She beat my daughter 7-5, and this is an autistic child. And we were all watching. And I applaud her mother for everything she has done to raise her daughter. So I want us to also speak to that as well. A lot of children with autism are gifted. They're intelligent. They just struggle with it in the way that we are expecting them to portray. They're good with numbers. They're good with details. And then in terms of the advice to parents, we come back to that. Advice to parents who are finding themselves in this space now. You talked about sort of having to let go of what you thought your child's future would be like, to accept what the reality was. And we'd like you to speak to that as we wrap up the conversation as well.
Thank you, Tolu. The good thing about these kids is that they are geniuses. Because they have this learning disability in one area doesn't mean that they are completely bad in another area. So essentially what happens is that their sensory limitations in one area enhances their sensory ability in other areas. So what you usually will get is that when it comes to things that are puzzling, all right, these kids are better. So you find out that they're very good with puzzles. One of the first things I realized with my son, which I never knew, and it was Dr. Akode that actually introduced us to it. When we took Daniel to her, and while we were trying to meet with her, she just gave Daniel a puzzle. And that was the first time I would see my son just ignore us and sit with the puzzle. I started to, just to make it up and all that. And so from there, we were just buying puzzles from 550 pieces to 100 pieces. I think at some time it was like 1,000 pieces. We just give, and he will be lost in it. So today, my son is much into art, graphic art and all that, very creative. And most of them, their understanding of education is not about reading stuff, physics, chemistry, biology. They understand things from like a workflow basis, from pictures, structures, and things like that. And that's why they're very analytical. They can be very intelligent, and they see things that you would never see. They're very, very, very detailed. So in things like music, my brother has a son also that's autistic, and if you see the way this guy plays the piano, he plays the piano like a Mozart or something,
like a pro.
And you wonder, where did he learn it from? This boy is just 9 years old. You understand? So, so there's a lot, about these children, and that's why society will be shooting itself in the foot if you don't give them the opportunity. And absolutely. A lot of them are out there. They need jobs. They need to be recognized. They need opportunity. Just give it to them. All right.
Yeah.
Frame create a space for them in an inclusive society, and you will see what they will bring out of it. And one more thing about them, they're incredibly emotionally intelligent. They are emotionally intelligent, especially when they become functional. They understand. They're not into this give and take world that we have. They are very emotionally intelligent, but they need to be supported because they believe everybody has the best intentions in life, which is not always the case. So as parents, you have to keep supporting them to make sure that, look, the fact that this person is smiling to you doesn't mean he likes you, but just understand that life functions, in a different way. So to parents,
very quickly, please,
who are in this space, autism is not a disease. It is not a demon possession. It's not a spiritual problem. It's a disability. That's what it is. And so there is a community of warriors there. And by warriors, I mean other parents dealing with children of special needs. There's a community out there. Reach out to those communities. You can talk to me, send me a DM or whatever. I will listen to you, because there is a need for us to come together and fight this thing, fight the stigma, and help our kids. A lot of the divorce rates and the separation rates among parents dealing with autistic children is very high. And unfortunately, a lot of men walk away and leave the children with the women. It's unfortunate, but that's what happens. So we need to talk about this so that we can, give help to those who need it, and hopefully, we turn the needle positively for these children and for their parents.
Thank you so much, Yinka. This has been an extensive conversation, but one we are very, very happy to shine a spotlight on. Thank you so much for advocating for your son, advocating for other parents, and being willing to step into the light and to tell this story. We very much appreciate it, and we know that there are people who have learned more than one or two things with today's episode. Thank you so much, Yinka.
Thank you very much, Yinka.
Man, that was
thank you,
very
ladies.
insightful.
All right, it was. And one thing he made mention of is the parents who are afraid. I won't say unwilling. They just feel that if they come out, the perception, the stigma, people who don't know.
But I just think that is a cultural. I think it's a cultural barrier. We still stigmatize people that have disabilities, like
even the ones we see.
Yes, are just people that can't walk. Maybe those that even have polio,
or even people that stutter.
Or stutter. Those are not even extreme disabilities. But people have extreme disabilities that are not even sight or hearing. Those ones are even structured. They have structure. But there's so many other disability types that people need support. I know a friend of mine, not my friend though, but one of our pastors in Fountain, his son has a skin disorder. It's some kind of like excessive dry skin.
Okay, almost like eczema or something.
Yes, it's like scaling.
There's something that causes your... Man,
Oh my
there's
God,
so
there
much.
is so much. But,
There's so much.
you know, over the years, because we have to keep exposing ourselves
Yes.
to knowledge. If you keep exposing yourself to knowledge, you'll find out that some of these things don't need to be feared. You don't need to withdraw your children from playing with them. You just need to understand what this is and how best to engage it.
I feel like Africans generally believe that a lot of things are contagious.
Yeah.
So I think that is very essential for them. The first thing you need to tell an African person is it's not contagious. So that you even come and listen, first of all.
And so I think at the end of the day, we just need to continue to raise awareness. And I like that challenge Yinka put out.
Yeah.
When you have situations like this, it's the mothers who stay, fathers sometimes walk away.
yeah.
It's a challenge to parents on both sides.
Yeah.
Please stay.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode of Jasiri. We want to say thank you to Yinka Ogunnubi for joining us today. With that, we'll wrap things up for today. But remember, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep spreading that Jasiri spirit wherever you go. Let's do this again tomorrow, 10 a.m. WAT. From me and the ladies, it's bye-bye.